It's July 17th, 2025. My guest is Martin Armstrong of Armstrong Economics, who just put out a newsletter called War is Coming. NATO wants to send 250,000 troops to Ukraine. Potkaars in Dutch lights a candle. Conversations of hope. Very happy to see you again, my returning guest, Mr. Martin Armstrong. There you are. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
How are you doing?
Okay, just watching the world go crazy, you know.
Yeah, and happily typing newsletters saying Europe is going to hell first. That would be me.
In all honesty, I've never seen a group of world leaders that are so incompetent and all on the same agenda. I just don't, I mean, the first obligation of a country is to prevent its people from being, going to war, not to take them into war.
Exactly.
It's just crazy, completely.
So we will discuss the rationale, the reason NATO apparently openly wants war with Russia. I will refer to some of the bits in that newsletter that you sent out with a question. The first question is, you said the European economy, especially Germany, is shrinking and there is zero chance that it will recover before 2028. So, yeah, first question, and the Dutch, this is recorded from the Netherlands, the Dutch will follow the Germans. How will the German people, how will the German economy be affected in the coming 3 years, according to your forecast?
Well, most of the problem, has been the climate agenda. And with Germany, I mean, it all started largely with COVID, and then you had the climate change, and then you had the sanctions on Russia. And so their economy is actually shrinking. So we're not talking about recession. We're talking about the actual potential for number of jobs has been declining. And the other country that is actually shrinking is Japan. So the two rising stars after World War II are the ones that are in most danger.
Are we still talking recession or are we talking depression already?
More of a depression, because they don't seem to grasp what's going on, and I think that they are listening to NATO and the rest of the neocons. I mean, let's be honest about it. NATO should have been shut down when the Warsaw Pact fell. Its whole purpose was, against communism. That's when Khrushchev was, "We will bury you," that stuff back in the 50s, right? That was not driven by economics. It was driven more by a philosophical idea that, communism was better than capitalism. And of course that failed, because what they didn't understand is that in communism as well as socialism, you're suppressing the individual. And what creates the progress is curiosity. And that's actually what Einstein had said. He said, without curiosity, we just get stagnation. You can't discover anything unless you're curious. And I think he hit that nail right on the head.
This is how I observe you also. I've been following your updates for years. And it's that curiosity when you were young into coins and history that made you made you the forecast of what I'm going to say. And I realize now, last time we talked in April, I think, you said there was a new forecast movie coming. So it just come to mind.
Yeah.
How is that thing doing?
Pretty good. I'm not sure when the release date of the next documentary is, and then they're converting it into a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
Something like the Big Short type thing. And
okay, so we're waiting for that. Yeah.
I ended up in this field. That's why I say I'm the accidental economist. Had no intention. If you ever asked me when I was in high school, is this something you'd want to do? I would have said, "What are you, nuts?" you know. But I think largely because my father had taken the family to Europe back in like 1964. And traveling everywhere, you had to change currency every time you crossed the border. It taught me foreign exchange. So when Bretton Woods collapsed in 71, I at least understood what currencies were. I mean, they never taught anything in school about this. And it was, because we had a fixed exchange rate. And so I happened to have had a client who was an executive VP at Franklin National Bank, which started MasterCard. They were the first bank to fail with the floating exchange rate in 1974. And he came to me, he says, "You understand this stuff." He says, "Would you come take a look at this?" And they lost, basically the bank failed on a 10% move in the Italian lira. So pretty much after that, anytime there was a currency crisis, like get the guy that did that. So I got dragged into everything, and so I have had a front row seat. So as you know, even when they were forming the euro, they came to me. It seems like, that's why I say I'm the accidental economist, because it's something I never thought would be a career or wanted to get into. I've been dragged in everywhere from around the world. When 1997, the Asian currency crisis happened, I was called in by China. So I've seen it everywhere. And still, this is what is the problem we're running into now. They never designed the euro correctly. And this is, I was giving a speech in Chicago, and Milton Friedman came to listen to me. And when I was done, he stepped up to shake my hand. He said, that was a fantastic speech. He says, "You're doing what I only dreamed about." And I didn't realize, but he had, in 1953, had written about a floating exchange rate system and how it would put checks and balances against governments. And that's actually what I was explaining. And that's what we're seeing now. They want war because the economy is going against them.
You wrote,
and if they don't do something, people are going to be grabbing pitchforks and going after the parliament.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, in the Netherlands, you can get arrested if you even speculate on the pitchfork scenario. So as a journalist, it's safer to stay away from those things. But I agree. The bigger the mess they make, eventually people will stand up out of their couches and do whatever they want to do, just for their livelihood, for their families.
It's human nature.
Exactly.
And it will respond the same way, no matter what century you're looking at or what culture. People come up with this idea, one world government will stop war. I said, really? Rome had one government. How many civil wars did they have?
You mentioned the euro and how it was started. Right now we have Ursula von der Leyen saying we need 2 trillion in 7 years. So there's 2,000 billion in the Netherlands. And you said when governments face internal collapse, they turn to militarism. So that's an aspect of NATO also, but maybe you can elaborate on the internal collapse. How is the EU collapsing, in your opinion, observation?
Largely, the problem you have is when you create these centralized governments. As I said, when they were forming the euro, they came to me and I said, okay, fine, this is how we create it. And it was Helmut Kohl that didn't allow the German people to vote. So he knew that they would be against any consolidation of the debt. And so that was his insistence. And so I warned him. I said, this is not going to compete with the dollar. As a fund manager, I can pick up the phone and say, buy me 10 billion US treasuries. Europe, I still have to make the same decision. Do I want Netherlands? Do I want Germany? Do I want France? Because they never consolidated. Right? And in 98, I warned them, this is not going to be sustainable long term. In the US, we have 50 states, a single currency, but every state has a different credit rating. And so this is the problem. I was told in 98, they understood what I was warning them about. They said, we just have to get the euro in first. We'll worry about the debts later. So it was about creating this bureaucracy. And when you create a centralized bureaucracy, they abuse power. So all of a sudden they get into changing people's cultures and, migrants and things of this nature. And, well, we don't care what you think. You're going to do what we say. That's the problem.
Some 10 years ago, I was of the opinion that the EU should be reformed and could be reformed. And I was advocating for Yanis Varoufakis, who started his initiative back in the day called DM25. Well, we're in 25 now. And he said back then, they have to reform by 25 or it's going to collapse. Right now, would you recommend if von der Leyen would call you? I mean, cows could fly, it could rain beer, Ursula could call you. If she called you, and would you recommend to even now consolidate the debt? Or would you recommend the member states to abandon ship and leave the EU?
Well, what you have to do is you can have a unified Europe, but it must be restrained to the economic conditions, not social. Even if you look at the history of Russia, Lenin, even though he's a communist, he envisioned that it would be a Soviet Union and that each republic retained its sovereignty, like the United States. It was Stalin, and he even wrote a letter, do not let him secede me. And it was Stalin who got in and grabbed everything, centralized power, removed all independent sovereignty, etc. And this becomes the problem. Whenever you get a government that then tries to impose its demands upon everybody else, that's when you get dissent.
Yeah, okay.
We saw it in the election in the United States when Camilla, somebody at one of her rallies said, about abortion and offends God or whatever, and she said, you're at the wrong rally. So in other words, you get in, it's your way or nobody else's. This is the problem with centralized governments. So Europe could survive if you jettison all this socialistic ideas and migrants or whatever. Just look at, the promise was nothing would pass without an absolute unanimous consent. Hungary starts to go against this. Oh, well, we'll strip them of the right to vote.
Exactly.
So, little by little, everything they promised has been thrown out the window.
So this power-hungry animal is never going to come down from its rock where it's sitting there, boss over everybody, and be humble again and lose the parts of the agenda that they shouldn't have had in the first place. So that's why I would say let's try abandon ship, but probably too late already.
Yeah, history shows it, unfortunately, that will happen. And I mean, even the United States will eventually break up. Whenever you try to impose a centralized cultural issue, just look at Ukraine. You have Zelensky deliberately trying to keep the war going, outlawing their language, outlawing their religion. And I mean, even the Pope came out against them. You can't say you can no longer have Orthodox Christianity. Christmas will be December 25th. I mean, even the Pope came out against Zelensky. I mean, these are things you cannot do.
Okay.
If you took Canada and you said, okay, fine, we're going to outlaw French, I think they're going to have a civil war.
I wonder when the people will stand up and for what cause. Nothing would surprise me there. Okay. The next question that I had prepared, I recently interviewed at an anti-NATO rally. We have those here in the Netherlands. I interviewed Dutch historian Kees van der Pijl. And he told me about a mechanism called military Keynesianism. And he said that might be in play, and the underlying reason NATO wants to increase their budgets to 5% of the national incomes. In your assessment, why are we increasing our NATO budgets to 5% of GDP?
Look, I have seen internal memos. When money was going to climate change, NATO was very upset. And they were basically questioning, how do we remain relevant? All right. This is pretty standard with any government agency. Once you create, they will fight tooth and nail to retain their power. NATO should have been shut down. But you have salaries, pensions, all this going on, and so they will always object. So NATO is even trying to open an office in Japan to expand its power to the Pacific. Why? To keep their jobs, to remain relevant. All right? So they must be against peace. They cannot say, Putin really is okay, he doesn't want war. They have to say he wants war, otherwise why give them money?
Okay, I recognize that a body like NATO would not voluntarily dismantle itself because they lost the purpose, but that military Keynesianism thing, I mean, you just mentioned that Germany and Japan are the two major economies currently in decline. So NATO expanding to Japan would kicking the can down the road there with NATO budgets be also an argument.
Yeah, look, they need war with Russia. They stupidly think that they can actually win. And I can tell you what I do know is that now China will back Russia against Europe. Why? Because they realize this is not a Ukraine war with Russia. No. This is NATO against Russia. You've even had, Boris Johnson come out and openly said that we're in a proxy war with Russia. And you had Trump even, asking Zelensky, he says, it was only hypothetical. Could you bomb Moscow and St. Petersburg? I mean, look, you do that, there goes all the capitals of Europe and maybe Washington and New York. I mean, this is absurd, absolutely absurd. I mean, we started the Ukrainian war. We overthrew the government. Victoria Nuland was there handing out sandwiches at Maidan. You had John McCain, who was the grandfather of neocons, on stage in Maidan saying, overthrow your government, we're with you. they installed the interim government, and it was the interim government that immediately attacked the Donbass to start the civil war. It's, this is the Minsk agreement. I mean, Merkel, I honestly never in my life ever saw a politician do what she did.
Betray the agreements.
She came out openly and said, we never intended to honor it. We were just buying, Ukraine time to build an army for war.
Yeah, and they did. And
Yeah.
and I this is heartfelt. I mean, Ukrainians and Russians are losing their lives over a war that nobody can win and that nobody benefits from except for the military-industrial complex. But the fact that Ukraine is running out of soldiers, is that the core reason that NATO now wants to send its own, like 250,000?
Oh, yes. I can tell you that there was a Ukrainian recovery conference July 10th and 11th, and they were proposing putting in $12 billion for rebuilding Ukraine. And they said we have to guarantee that money along with military. And NATO has basically said, all right, fine, if they can't get Ukraine into NATO, they said, well, we can still basically enter the conflict as they did in Bosnia in 1995 and Kosovo in 1999. They were not NATO members.
So, okay, that leads into my next question to you. War needs to be sold to the constituents. Nobody wants to go to war. Propaganda is running high right now here in the Netherlands, and it's not that effective just yet. I mean, we are not yet at the selling point. Do you feel they will find some kind of escalation or false flag even to sell going to war to the public?
Yes, I would be very concerned over about the next 6 to 8 weeks. Ukraine is losing. We have 2 employees in Ukraine. Both are in Berlin. I mean, you have over 8 million have fled the country. And what I most have no intention of going back. And I don't see where this benefits the Ukrainian people. People that I have even spoken to in the military said, they were initially told to go just to the border with Russia, and it was MI6 out of Britain which told them to invade into the Kursk region. There was a peace deal, and Boris Johnson hopped on the plane, went over there, and told them not to sign it.
We will have none of that.
That made the front page of the Ukrainian press. So the Ukrainian people that I speak to, they have a legitimate question. Are we allowed to have peace without permission from London, Paris, and the United States? They're not in charge of their own country. This is why Zelensky will not have any sort of an election, because he knows he would win anyhow.
Yeah, well, that doesn't make the news here either. He's years overdue for both the presidential elections and the parliamentary elections. But
the irony is that Putin's a dictator. Really? Well, Putin at least stood for election. Does Ursula ever stand for an election? No. Has Zelensky stood for an election? No.
Now, if NATO were to push through on this plan, even there might be an escalation, like you mentioned, in the coming two months or so. But would all countries in NATO be united in this escalation, or can you imagine it accelerate the breakup of NATO over this?
I think at least as it stands now. I mean, I have spoken to some people on Capitol Hill, and my opinion was that we should exit NATO. And I actually got the response, "You're right." I was kind of surprised, but I think they desperately need some sort of a false flag. If you look at this objectively, Putin has laid down many red lines. Can't give long-term missiles to Ukraine to attack into Russia. They do it. They have done everything that Putin said don't do. Why? Because they're desperate to try and get him to attack anything in NATO so they can claim that Russia is the aggressor. And that hasn't worked so far. As I don't think, Putin's probably the smartest guy at the table. All right. He understands what's going on here. So he's not acting irrational or emotional, which they were hoping to tap into. So the problem that I see is that if they can't get him to attack, they're probably going to create some sort of a false flag and say that he did. I mean, right on Wikipedia, you can look at Project Northwoods. The CIA proposed killing Americans to blame it on Cuba to justify the invasion. JFK said, "Are you out of your mind?" and shut him down and wanted to disband the CIA. Now we're getting a lot of information that they were behind basically killing JFK. But I mean, these false flags are not unusual. I mean, Hitler used it with the Reichstag.
No, they're not unusual. That's right.
It's so I am concerned that they would do something to blame Russia, to get everybody riled up and say we have to do this, whatever.
What's your observation? What's your take on Tulsi Gabbard, now chief of the security services, and saying, well, that deep state is kind of tricky to contain. How is he doing?
Look, the deep state is very deep. And, look, I was told a long time ago, when you had J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, what he would do, he had files on every politician. And he would walk in and say, this is what we found. We're going to bury it to protect you, and then you got that politician on a leash. You either do what I tell you or this file comes out. I mean, that's what, is the big problem with releasing the Epstein files. I mean, that was the biggest blackmail operation ever. And they distort people, think, oh, they're all pedophiles. Look, if it was just something for, oh, let's go get some young girls, you do that maybe with friends at a bar. You don't go get Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew. You don't get people that are high up who suddenly now, like J. Edgar Hoover, you could pull out that file and say, hey, you're going to do this or else. That's, I think, the big problem that they're running into. You release names, okay, fine. The real question is, what did they do? Were they blackmailed? Did they do something else? I mean, you're talking about a spider web that can go out dramatically. Nobody knows the extent. And certainly, Epstein didn't do this for himself. He was basically taking orders from somebody else. Was that Mossad? Was it CIA? I mean, this thing goes much further than people. It's not just pedophiles. You know, it can lead to a very, very deep state.
If we move, I'll come back to Trump and Trump administration and this part of our conversation in a moment. But just to wrap up what we just discussed, today is the 17th of July. It's the 11th Memorial Day, 11th year since MH17 flight was shot down over eastern Ukraine. And I just recently interviewed Dutch journalist Erik van der Beek, an author to the book The MH17 Deceit. And he said, in hindsight, Putin may regret having moved into Ukraine in 2022, provoked as he may have been. He still gave the Western warmongers their conflict. Now, wouldn't an all-out a provocation or an all-out attack on Kiev, I mean, that was in your newsletter also, wouldn't that be even a bigger mistake?
It depends at this point. I think maybe the only way to wake up the world is to do what the U.S. did to Japan. Drop the leaflet, say you got a week to get out of town, and then just level the city. And then maybe people would wake up and say, hey, do we really want to go down this road? But, I mean, the media is so biased. You know, Putin comes out and says something, oh, he's threatening nuclear war. No, he's warning you. You know, let's put this in reality. He's not threatening your, war on you for no reason. All right. He's basically saying, do you really want to go in this direction? But they twist it the other way.
Pretty much.
I'm concerned that Putin is basically, as I said, he's probably the smartest guy at the table. All right. It's why I think Zelensky tried to assassinate him. They want somebody in there who would respond more emotionally. And you remove Putin, we're going to get a Russian neocon, and he's going to go, oh, really? Let's go. That's my concern. Everybody has their neocons. They have them, we have them, everybody does. China has them.
Okay, let's look at the United States then. In the report that you put out early this week, you said, Trump, who hated war, has taken us into World War III. I've tried so hard to defeat my own computer, and I've always failed. I've tried my best, but Socrates, that is your computer, you nicknamed it Socrates, will be correct again. So get prepared. Now, is it your assessment that Trump will blunder into an armed conflict with Russia, or is he orchestrating it?
That's a good question. I don't think him personally came up with this. I think he's being pushed into it. This nonsense about 50 days, you're going to sign a peace deal. If I'm Putin, there's no way I'm going to sign a peace deal. I did that with Minsk agreement, and then what did you do? You have, we have, staff in Germany, and I was told a friend who was 60 years old was told to report for duty. I had a friend that was at the Vienna peace conference a couple months ago. And he walked down and he says, this is no longer about peace. Everybody's talking about instituting drafts. It's all about war. Everything you look at it's war, war, war.
I can understand the industrial military complex, the people selling the guns that they want to go to. I mean, that's their trade, that's their business. I can understand that. I can also imagine that when the economy is tanking that hard, that Ursula von der Leyen and so on, who want to retain power, would even move to war. But is it those two things? Is that the incentive? My parliament in the Netherlands is also advocating war. They're all pro-war. Nobody's negotiating.
Yeah. You had Merz come out and said that, negotiation, is done.
Yeah. Taboo.
Look, the neocons, the number one rule in their book: do not speak to the enemy. What politician in the Netherlands has even tried to talk to Putin? Any?
Well, I know a couple of journalists, but politicians.
Journalists. I'm talking about any politician who's been interested in negotiating a peace.
Well, the problem in the Netherlands is, now that you mention it, we don't have any opposition. So it's a multi-party system, right? We don't have two parties. We have like 10 or 15 parties. And there's only one small dissident party left in parliament. All the other ones, that's the only one there. And they're being blamed and harassed about for advocating the Russian standpoint. But I don't think they actually engaged in conversation. And if they did, well, good for them. I mean, I like Oliver Stone. I like Tucker Carlson. You need to engage in. By the way, last time I spoke to you, I said we should go to Putin, talk to him ourselves. The solution lies in dialogue, right?
Yes. I mean, look, what you do. I was in Washington when Reagan came to power, and you had Gorbachev made his speech. Reagan wanted to go speak to him. And I can tell you the neocons, they said, okay, they couldn't say he was a communist anymore. So they advised against it. They said you can never trust a Russian. Reagan didn't listen to him, and he went. If he didn't, the Berlin Wall would never have fallen. All right. But this is what they are always against. Just look, Trump spoke to Putin. What did Europe say? Oh, how dare he? So, in other words, if you refuse to even speak to an adversary, regardless of who it is, all right, you're cutting off any possibility of peace.
So that's where we are.
You can't come to a solution.
Dialogue is a sign of resistance. It's just engaging in conversation is being the resistance. Okay.
Look, this is, unfortunately, they understand this, and this is why they tell all the politicians, and you can look, from the North Europe to the bottom, they're all the same. Don't talk to Putin. So if you're not going to talk, and you're not going to basically try and even protect your people with peace, the only solution becomes war.
In the newsletter that we're discussing, you wrote, "My most profound concern is that we're entering a panic cycle over international war in 2026. War will mean lower bond prices." Now, what you didn't write, but the way I interpret it, lower bond prices would imply higher interest rates on state debt, adding an additional burden on the population that's already facing higher taxes, if only for the NATO budget increase, which is being advocated by the ministers here in the Netherlands. So why do they choose the path of war instead of diplomacy and peace if it's going to give them the bond apocalypse, as Max Kaiser would call it?
Because what they're doing, they just, pushing through this in the U.S., this Genius Act. All right, what is it? It's to issue stable coins backed by U.S. treasuries. All right. They did this in 1863. They issued national bank currency. So the banks were allowed to issue currency against government bonds that they bought. All right, so
I'm assuming that didn't work out then.
You had Blinken take Russia out of SWIFT, and then had the audacity to threaten China. If you help Russia, we'll do the same to you. That created BRICS. That divided the world economy. These people only see what's in front of their nose. All right. Threatening China. China held 10% of U.S. national debt. They've been dumping. Japan selling. Okay. oh, de-dollarization. No, that's not the issue. The issue is you do not own the debt of an adversary in war because they will not pay it. All right. So why is this Genius Act suddenly coming up? We'll create staple coins and they will be backed by treasuries. They're looking for a way to sell treasuries because Japan, China are not buying. So they need another market. Okay, so this is part of the whole debt problem. Yep. Europe is looking at creating CBDCs. You had Spain putting in you can't take out more than 3,000 euros out of your account without government permission. This is all about shutting down the free markets.
Yeah, tell me about it. I'm living it right here in the Netherlands also. Okay. So the computer system that you programmed, that you built, that you call Socrates, I just mentioned that, follows or predicts, so you have to elaborate on that maybe, your economic confidence model. But you came up with that even before Socrates. You see cycles in everything, and also in the economy and in confidence. So the economic confidence model has a turning point, I believe early August, if I remember correctly. What do you expect from that pivot? And you mentioned stablecoins. Now that's something different from Bitcoin, I have to say. But do you see a correlation with Bitcoin because you also foresaw that thing making a top in August?
Yeah, look, everybody was talking, Bitcoin, replace the dollar. But they don't even understand how the monetary system functions. And they blame the central banks for inflation, which is not true. It's the debt. The debt markets are what are liquid. I mean, the old theories of the 60s, if you had a $100 bond from the U.S., you went to the bank and you said, would you lend me $50 on it? It was illegal. All right. After Bretton Woods collapsed, if you want to trade gold futures, you can buy T-bills and post it as collateral. So the debt has become money that just pays interest today. So the old theories that it's less inflationary to borrow than to print, all that's out the window. So all these people that say, with the central bank creating money, the central banks have maybe 5 to 7%. That's about it. Most of it is the debt markets. And that's the problem. If they can't sell the new debt, that's when the crash comes. All right. That's why they need the staple coins. They're trying to create a new market to buy this stuff. That's the CBDCs and everything else that you'll see in Europe.
So just to translate that in simple words, if I understand you correctly, you say they have found a new market for their government debt. They're going to make you own it and buy it as the population, as the citizens. If you want money, this is the only money that you're going to get. And by the way, pardon my French, we have you by the balls because you have a mortgage, you have loans. This is the only way you're going to get food for your family. Move over to these stable coins or to these CBDCs. And by the way, that's the way that we're going to finance our state debt. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, look, and Ursula came out and was talking about confiscating unused assets.
Yeah, that's my savings.
Yes. That's what Germany did in December 1922. You can buy the bonds on eBay. They took your up to 10% of your accounts. They handed you a bond, which they defaulted on. Then the hyperinflation starts in 23. All right. To complete the timeline, when Hitler comes into power in 33, 10 years later, he passes a law that says it's illegal for a German to have an account outside the country. He's trying to bring the money back because everybody fled because of hyperinflation. 1934, Switzerland starts the anonymous numbered account to protect the Germans. So, Ursula wants to confiscate people's savings, because they're unused, so she can spend them on war. You're going to create a major, major panic, the same way what happened in Germany. The money will try and get out. They're going to put on capital controls to try and prevent any money from leaving Europe. Once that first bullet is shot, you're not getting any money out. Just look at what they did World War I. They shut down all the stock markets.
Yeah. Now, people, I know you don't want to, you're not here to give financial advice or what have you, but people watching this conversation are going to complain to me, say you should have asked them. So what to do then? Should people buy Bitcoin, silver, gold, or just pay off their debt if they can? What should the individual do to brace for impact that's imminent?
I'd leave the debt there, but gold, silver, they are at least tangible assets. Bitcoin, I'm not that fond of. I can tell you, being in Florida, we had a couple of hurricanes. You couldn't even use a credit card. So if the power grid goes down, what good is any cryptocurrency? Plus, if Germany counterfeited British pounds during World War II to undermine their economy. So you go to a digital currency. If I were Putin, I would, explode an EPM bomb above, Europe, and that would wipe out all the then what are you going to do? You can't get your cryptocurrency. You don't even know if it still exists. These are security issues to me. I mean, why would you ever put everything on an electronic basis?
I will just spread. And to the Bitcoin people watching this, I'm not going to engage in the pro or contra discussion on Bitcoin with Mr. Armstrong here. I just wanted to get your opinion on it.
Look, Bitcoin has been used mainly as a method to get money out of countries. I know Canadians are using the Bitcoin. What Bitcoin is, it's the same instrument like gold. Okay. So it all started with Bitcoin volume really began with the money laundering out of China. They figured it out. They bought Bitcoin. They sold it in the United States, and they got dollars in the United States and opened an account. Canadians are doing it. Europeans are doing it. So it's not a store of wealth per se. Nothing is a store of wealth. Everything goes up and everything goes down in price. But my only concern is that if you have all your assets in that and the power grid goes down, you're screwed.
Same goes for your credit card. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a means to move money from one country to another for now.
Which sounds tremendously useful, if I might add.
Yes, and that's been why it's been, popular. Really, that's been the real issue. Okay. When China figured it out, they called all the people that were creating bitcoins into the government for meetings. Eventually, they would do that in Europe and the United States as well. But that's, I think, why they're trying to create these stable coins. This will be more secure than Bitcoin. It's actually backed. All these issues.
Well, it will be backed by the might of the country issuing them, so they would have that over Bitcoin. However, Bitcoin is a globe. But let's drop the Bitcoin topic there. I want to apologize on behalf of my country to the rest of the world. We gave NATO Mark Rutte. In my defense, in our defense, he screwed up the Netherlands over the past 14, 15 years. Before he's starting to do this with NATO, but he's a puppet also. I mean, this is not of Rutte's invention. This was coming long before he
Yes.
joined NATO, I think. Final question is on, we are making comparisons to world wars. And United Nations was created after the Second World War. What's your assessment of United Nations and their Security Council as a body to stop the NATO warmongers?
Impossible.
Oh.
You get a lot of just people that you get rules and regulations in there, and you got to be, mindful. Like I said, I could run for Congress in the United States, say whatever you want to hear. I'll save the whales. I'll do whatever. Then you get down there, and then you go, congratulations. Now here's how you vote. Just look at the votes. They're down party line. All right. So it doesn't matter. Somebody else makes the decisions in the back rooms. In Europe, the laws are made by the commission, and they never stand for elections. And they call, they lie to us. They say, "Oh, we live in a democracy." We do not. At best, they're republics. We have representatives who don't really represent us. A democracy, we should have the right to vote. Do we go to war with Russia, yes or no? We're never asked. We're said, here's a gun, get in line, and go over there. That's basically it. So
right now, I wouldn't even place a bet on the Dutch people voting for peace or for war. They might even change their mind only when the body bags come back. That's my assessment of the Dutch.
That's generally what happened, even like Vietnam. When they were lying about the death tolls, I lost most of my friends from high school to Vietnam. And even back then, we were beginning the question, was it the people from my town are the number one people to die, or what? Or are they lying about the numbers? But, this is what they always do. It doesn't matter. They're going to say whatever they need to say to retain power. And this has been going on for thousands of years. Nothing's changed. Thrasymachus, you can read in Plato, had a debate with Socrates. And he said, doesn't matter. Justice is the same in every form of government. Monarchy, aristocrat, democracy, dictatorship, whatever. It's always the self-interest of those in power. It was correct over 2,000 years ago. Nothing's changed.
We're talking still. That's positive. Again, if the Russian administration would be watching this, I urge them again to invite you over to talk to Mr. Putin and ask me to film it. We did this last April. It hasn't happened yet, but who knows?
I would love to, but it's. I know where he stands. I know what the issues are. I know what's the problem. But he and I could agree, but would that change the world? No.
So what should the Dutch do then? Abandon ship? Should we move to Florida? All of us?
I do recommend that you get some of your assets, liquid assets, out of Europe, just as a hedge, because Ursula is saying, confiscating unused assets is not very good. No. And we can only forecast the future based upon the past. And they will always respond in their own self-interest. That's what Thrasymachus was saying. Justice is always defined by those in power. So, you disagree with them, oh, you're a terrorist, you're this, you're that, whatever. Out come the labels, And so that's what I would recommend, at least have some assets outside so that when that first bullet is shot, and it is coming, they will not talk to Putin, period. So the fact that they refused to talk, and you had Merz coming out and saying, no, diplomacy's dead. When was the last time you got on the phone and even talked to Putin? So how can you say diplomacy's dead? But so
Trump is.
When that first bullet goes, that's pretty much it.
Trump still is, I think, but I hear you. Well, at least we are still talking, Martin. Thank you again for this cheerful conversation, and let's continue to do this for as long as the internet allows and health allows. All the best, my friend.
I agree.
Take care.
Het gaat hier vandaag over saamhorigheid.
We zien dingen verschillen, hebben allebei wel gelijk. Als we verder willen en ik gewoon van jouw kant bekijk. Als ik daar zie wat jij ziet, respect is waar het begint. Als we dat kunnen houden, wat sterker is, wint.